Hi guys, Philip Good back here again with another video for you. I am a relationship and unconditional love coach and an abuse recovery specialist. This video is a continuation of the book I'm writing. I'm doing a series of videos first, and then I will transcribe the audio, the video into words and then into a book form. Okay, so this video is chapter 18 of my book, Ignited by the Bottle, Delivered by the Fist. And this chapter is all about restarting our lives in Australia. So at the end of the last video, we'd come to the end of our tether. You know, we had our money taken. We'd been to a lawyer to assess what the chances were of getting our money back. And he said probably next to none, right? And because obviously crooked people, con men, employ crooked lawyers to help them to circumvent the laws. And then, so even though the person, this chap Dan that I've been talking about in the previous video, was eventually, he was taken to court. There was something like 3,000 people in the organization that he formed for education and investment purposes. But a few of them, it took him to court. And he'd said previously to, for example, an audience of 300 or 400 people that, think about it. I've got all your deposits on the properties that you've given me. I'm fighting you in court with your own money. How long do you think you'll last compared to me? He was absolutely blatant, saying those sorts of things. And but he was taken to court, and he was adjudged bankrupt. And but the judge at the time said, "Oh, but Mr. So and So, you're I see that you're on the pension, and that's the only assets you've got." Because all the assets that he did have, he and his son had them in investment trusts and corporations, not only New Zealand, Australia, but over the world as well. So the judge actually said, "Oh, I see, Miss McKeown, you've got no assets in your own name. You've got no home or anything like that. You're just on the pension." Because this chap, Dan, always said to us that even though he's of pension age, he was, I don't know, probably end up time he left here, he would have been 69, close to 70, I guess. And he said because he's got no assets in his own name, he'll still get the old age pension, right? And so it was. He was in court, and the judge said exactly that. And he said, "Oh well, I judge you bankrupt, and you've got to start making reparations to the people you've conned and stuff. And but I see you'll only we'll take just a certain amount out of your pension." So it was only a pittance. It was pathetic, right? And so anyway, what did we decide to do? On the 19th of May 2008, we decided to leave New Zealand and go to Australia. Like I said, that was a horrific thing for I and I to have to do, leave our country of birth to go to a new country that we really didn't know a lot of people in. And of course, we were going there ourselves. So our 4 children, 3 of whom were, 2 of whom were married, and the third one was in a relationship, and got married soon, a little bit later, actually. So anyway, it was like we were leaving them behind, right? And that was their viewpoint. But for us, we just had to get away and make a fresh start. And that's what we did in Australia. So we ended up living with a nephew of people we'd become friends with, and they were clients of ours in the Investors Forum. And so we went and stayed with him, stayed with Greg for a little while we're getting on our feet. And so we eventually found a position. We went back to dairy farming, obviously, which was safe and secure for us. We knew something about that, and weren't intent on getting into any other type of business at all. We wouldn't, we were in the mindset was we just couldn't trust anybody, right? We just didn't trust anybody pretty much at all, actually. So anyway, I eventually found a position, and so we landed in Melbourne. We ended up going for a job down in Warrnambool, which is in Western Victoria, and we got a job down there. I got a job down there as a dairy farm manager, and both I actually worked there as well. She did a bit of work on the farm as well, so we're both employed there. So anyway, we were there for 12 months, and then we left and moved up to the Hunter Valley and in New South Wales, and to a place called Muswellbrook, and took on another manager's role there. And then about 12 months later, I'd been in touch with a few people around the country, looking for respective positions, and one came up. I was rang by an overseer of farms down in Tasmania for the Van Diemen's Land Company, who owned about huge big tracts of land, and they had probably 28 to 30 farms. Not all of them were dairy farms, but the bulk of them were. So anyway, this the overseer, the operating manager down there, the overseer said, "Would you be interested in coming down from for Hunter Valley, New South Wales, down to Tasmania, and take over one of our farms, take over managing one of our dairy farms down here?" And so one of the managers on the farms was going to leave. So we said, "Oh, okay," and they said they'd pay our way down as well, and so on. So we decided to do that. It's about, for all I know, it's about seeing a bit of the country. Been out to Western Victoria, up to Hunter Valley. Now we're going down to Tasmania, right? So I was up in the northwestern part of Tasmania. So it was quite a lovely place. And we were there. And we did, each farm we're on, we substantially increased production, just using really good pasture management and stock management technique, and we had a lot of skills in those sort of areas. So increased production and profit every farm we went on to. And the farm in Tasmania we arrived at, I think it was ranked about number 23 out of 25 farms in terms of performance. And in 6 months, we turned it around from number 23 out of 26 farms to number 4 equal out of 26 farms. So that's how much we improved it in a little period of 6 months. But at the end of that 6 months, or towards the end of 6 months, I had an accident on the farm, and actually ripped a ligament off my elbow, my right elbow bone. So we eventually had to leave that farm because it needed time to heal, and I had to have an operation and so on. So we went back to the mainland in Victoria, and sort of settled around the Druin Warrigal area where we are now. We live in Warrigal now, in Gippsland, and which is in the southwest, well, southeast of Melbourne actually. And we were situated now, and where we were when we came from Tasmania, we're about an hour from Melbourne, or from where our daughter and son-in-law lives, which is about an hour and a bit, depending on the traffic. Anyway, we ended up after my elbow came right. Took about 12 months. I was off work about 12 months, and in 2014 we ended up getting a position for a couple out at a place called Lapatouche, which is out from Druin in the Gippsland area, not too far away from Warrigal, where we now live. And took on a dairy farm manager's role there, and that was fine. We went through the calving period, and were doing well, increasing production on that farm. And just before Christmas in 2014, Eileen, my wife Eileen, was out about to hose down the cowshed yard. It's a concrete yard, rectangular yard. And I was in the cowshed actually washing the teat cups, which we used to put on the cows, washing them, put them on the jetters to be cleaned, and generally cleaning up in the cowshed. And Eileen was going out to wash down the, with a hose, pressure hose, wash down the outside yard, right? This particular day, though, had been raining. It was quite a cold rain, so there was actually a hail actually came down as well. And what happened was the hail settled underneath the cow muck in the yard, right? So you really couldn't see what was there or how much was there. So anyway, I only went out there with the gumboots, and she had a wet weather gear on, a raincoat and leggings as well. Went out there and started hosing the yard down, and she picked the hose up and she was about to walk off with it. And all of a sudden, I just happened to look up in time to see um, her legs sort of like came out from, she virtually slipped over, and her head was going right down towards the muck, the cow muck on the yard, on the concrete yard. And to stop her head or her face hitting the cow muck and the concrete, she put her elbows out like this to stop her head hitting the concrete. And what she did was she actually snapped both her shoulders here, snapped both her shoulders, clean breaks. And to say that was horrific was, it was absolutely devastating for her, devastatingly painful, as you can imagine. So I had to quickly call the ambulance, and the ambulance, two ladies came out and had to give them a hand to get Eileen onto the stretcher and away in the ambulance. And yeah, that was a horrific time. And Eileen, of course, taken to Warragul Hospital, West Gippsland Hospital. She was assessed there, and finally it was decided, she was gonna have an operation to pin her shoulders. And then because she was allergic to titanium steel, she wasn't able to have that procedure, that operation. So they said, "Oh, it'll just have to be a natural heal then for your two shoulders, and it'll just take longer, that's all." So that was a terrible situation. In the meantime, like Ollie and I had been milking together on this farm that I was managing, so I had to carry on milking the cows and doing the farm work. And poor Eileen was in West Gippsland Hospital, and soon she was transferred out to a place called Andrew's House out in Trafalgar, which was, they had some respite care beds in this facility, nursing facility, and it was really sort of like an old people's home, but that's a respite care for people who had traumatic injuries like Eileen. So she was able to get a bed there, and this was just before Christmas, 2014. She was out there because she had to have 24-hour care because she couldn't toilet herself, she couldn't brush her teeth, she couldn't feed herself because both shoulders were broken. So that was an absolute nightmarish situation, to put it mildly. So it took ages for Eileen to, obviously she was in hospital there for probably about a good 6 to 8 weeks, and I could only see her, after milking, and then I'd travel there. So it was a little distance, not too far, but travel there to see her, and I couldn't be there with her during the day, of course, because I had to be working, doing the farm work and milking cows and so on. So yeah, so it was a heck of a time, and then got to a point where I was able to come home, and but she had to have a lot of care. She had a nurse come out to her every other day type thing to see how she was getting on, to assist her and to assess her and so on. And but anyway, we got to the end of that year and end of that season, and so like June 2014, and yet again we decided to move on and move out of there, and so we went and lived and stayed with our daughter for a while. They were down in Melbourne, and then we sort of tried to assess what we're going to do from there. And so we went out to. We eventually got another job out at just down in a bit further out from Gippsland, in a place called Yarragon, and So that was with about 700 cows. We still stayed in dairy farming. Of course, Eileen couldn't work. She was like she was still recovering, and just it took years to recover from her injuries. Then she got frozen shoulders, and the sort of medication they had her on for pain were, all the heavy opioids like Oxynorm, OxyContin, oxycodone. She was on fentanyl patches. She had got into situations where, even at one stage, they even put her on Lyrica for epilepsy, believe it or not. And so she'd end up coming out of the bedroom, for example, walk down the hallway and into the lounge room, and she stopped there with her eyes closed, just standing up. She was just totally out of it. At times, she'd fall sideways into the wall, fall back into the cat bowl. So all these sort of things as a result of heavy, heavy medication, heavy opioids, which were absolutely frightening to see the effects or the side effects of, right? Nobody explained to us what the side effects were. But anyway, so so Eileen had her injury, and she got some financial compensation for that, for her injury. And of course, I continue working, like I say, out at Yarragon, and after arriving there, probably about the first 6, 7 months, I had another accident myself. So as we're getting older, like when we first went over to Australia, let's take back to there. We were both 55 years of age, right? So we weren't 30 years of age when we lost our money or we had our money stolen by Larry, my brother-in-law. We weren't 30 anymore and could start again. We were 55, so it was much harder. And as we found in the business of farming, we were getting a lot more accidents. More accident prone being older. And farming is a tough business. There's a lot of potential accidents, and it's hard physical work, time consuming, and often 7 days a week, right? So, but anyway, after 7 to 8 months, we got through calving on this farm at Yarragon, and yes, I had an accident that involved my left knee actually, and I had to go and see an orthopedic surgeon, and he did a minor operation on it, and then it got to the point where it needed a full left knee replacement. So yet again, this went right through to 2017, where we moved away from that farm and moved into town in a place called Druin. And likewise, I got some financial compensation for my knee injury, which was actually a result of the owner of that farm. I was climbing into a silage wagon actually, and it didn't have a proper ladder on it, so to climb up via a wheel, a tire and a wheel, to elevate myself into the silage wagon, because we were cutting strings on bales, and this is what the owner of the farm wanted us to do. I had thought of another way that we could have cut the strings while it was on the ground, and then used a grab to grab the hay and silage and put that into the wagon, which would have meant that we didn't have to climb into the wagon and have potential accidents, which I had. And so, which inevitably led to me having a full knee replacement, and that did not go well. So I only had some financial compensation. I did as well. So we ended up in Druin, renting a home, and I had my knee replacement and so on, and that led on to another horrific accident that Eileen had, and so we're both accident prone. So getting our injuries on farming, we'd stopped farming at that stage. I had a knee replacement, and I was on crutches. And Eileen was, not too good with all the medication she was on. She had a whole Webster pack of medication, which she still has, by the way. but it was horrific, all the side effects that she was going through. Anyway, I'll just leave this video there because to elaborate on another accident Eileen had, almost at the point where I had my first knee replacement, it was quite horrific. So I'll explain that a bit more and go and elaborate a bit more in the next video. Okay, guys. Okay. I love you and leave you. Bye for now. Love you guys. Bye.